2 words, that's all it takes. 2 words that are so simple, so ordinary, so completely unremarkable on the surface that you've probably said them 1,000 times without realizing we're holding a loaded weapon. But when these 2 words are delivered at the right moment in the right tone from the right man, something happens inside a woman's brain that she cannot control, cannot override, and cannot forget. Niccolò Machiavelli, the most feared strategic mind of the Renaissance, a man who was tortured for what he knew and exiled for what he wrote. He spent his life decoding why human beings surrender their will to certain people and resist others, why some leaders command absolute devotion while others can't command a room, and embedded in his analysis, hidden between the lines about princes and armies and the mechanics of power, is the explanation for why 2 specific words spoken correctly bypass every music defense a woman has ever built and reach the one place she never lets anyone touch. I'm going to give you those 2 words today. But more importantly, music, I'm going to show you why they work. Because without the words are just sounds. Music, with the why, they become the most powerful tool you'll ever carry. Music, Chapter 1. Why words matter more than you think. Most men treat words like filler, background noise between actions. They think what matters is what they do, not music, what they say. And to a point, they're right. Actions matter. Consistency matters. Character matters. But Machiavelli understood something about language that most people, even educated people, completely miss. Words don't just communicate information. They establish frames. Every word you say to a woman isn't just conveying meaning. It's positioning you. It's telling her where you stand in relation to her. It's defining the dynamic between you in real time. And most men, through careless language, through words chosen out of habit rather than intention, position themselves beneath her without ever realizing it. Think about the phrases men default to. Can I take you out sometime? Can I? Permission. You've placed her above you and asked to be granted access. I'd do anything for you. Anything. You've just music announced that you have no limits, no boundaries, no price. You've made yourself infinite supply, and infinite supply has zero variable. I just want to make you happy. Make 3 words that communicate a man whose entire existence has been organized around her emotional. She's the sun. He's a satellite, and satellites don't generate attraction. You're so beautiful. I can't believe you're talking to me. Translation. I have assessed my own variable, determined it to be lower than yours, and I'm publicly announcing my disbelief at your willingness to tolerate my presence. Thank you for your cacity. Each of these phrases feels harmless. Some of them feel romantic, but Machiavelli would hear them, and it was because every single one violates a principle he considered foundational to power. Never position yourself beneath the person you're trying to influence, not above them either. That's arrogance. And Machiavelli warned against arrogance, almost as much as he warned against weakness, but never beneath. Because the moment you position yourself beneath someone, you've given them authority over you. And authority once given is almost impossible to take back. The 2 words I'm going to give you do the opposite. They don't position you above her. They don't position you below her. They do something far more powerful and far more rare. They position you beside yourself. Chapter 2, the Machiavellian principle behind the words. Before I give you the words, you need to understand the engine that makes them work, because these 2 words without the underlying principle are just syllables. And Machiavelli never cared about syllables. He cared about machinery. In chapter 25 of The Prince, Machiavelli writes his most famous passage about fortune. He compares fortune to a raging river that floods and destroys everything in its path. And then he says something that most readers gloss over because they're too busy being shocked by what comes next. He says the man who succeeds is the man whose mode of preceding music matches the times. Not the smartest man, not the strongest man, not the richest or the most handsome or the most eloquent. The man whose behavior matches the specific demands of the moment he's in. And then Machiavelli says something even more critical. He observes that most men cannot do this. Most men have one mode, one approach, one gear. They behave the same way in every situation because they found something that worked once and they fossilized around it. The aggressive man is always aggressive. The cautious man is always cautious. The charming man is always charming. And when the moment demands something different from their default setting, they fail. Not because they lack ability, because they lack range. Range, that's the engine. The man who can be firm and then gentle, serious, music, and then playful, intense, and then light, present, and then absent. The man who cannot be predicted because he isn't operating from a script but from genuine, spontaneous authenticity, that man matches every moment. And matching every moment is what Machiavelli identified as the single greatest predictor of success in any human endeavor. Now, here's how this connects to the two words. Most men, when they interact with women, are locked in one mode, the trying mode, trying to impress, trying to connect, trying to demonstrate value, trying to be enough. And trying has a specific energy that women detect instantly. It's forward leaning, effortful, hungry. It says, I need something from this interaction. And the moment she senses that need, her guard goes up because need from a stranger is a liability. Need from a man she's evaluating is a red flag. Need from anyone is pressure, and pressure doesn't create attraction, it creates resistance. The two words I'm about to give you break the trying mode entirely. They shift you from leaning forward to leaning back, from chasing to anchoring, from performing to observing. And that shift, that single tonal recalibration triggers something in her that all your trying never could. Curiosity, not the casual surface level curiosity of, oh, that's interesting. Deep curiosity, the kind that keeps her awake at 1 a.m., staring at her ceiling, wondering what you meant. The kind that makes her replay the conversation in her head, scanning for clues, constructing theories, building a mental model of you that she can't quite complete because you gave her just enough to start the puzzle and not enough to finish it. That's the engine. Now, let me give you the key. Chapter Music 3. The two words. The two words are, I know. That's it. I know. Now, before you dismiss this as too simple, before your brain rushes to judgment because it expected something flashier, stop, take a breath, and let me show you what these two words actually do when deployed correctly. Because the simplicity is the weapon and the situations where you use them are what transform them from ordinary language into something she has never experienced from another man. Chapter 4, the first deployment scenario. 1. She compliments you. This is the situation most men handle worst because most men are so starved for female approval that when a compliment lands, they don't know what to do with it. They fumble, they deflect, they doff deprecate, they overthank, they turn into golden retrievers who just heard the word walk. You look really good tonight. Average man. Music, really? Thanks so much. That means a lot coming from you. You look amazing too. Like, seriously. Wow. What she hears, validation received, gratitude deployed, status confirmed. He values my opinion of him more than his own opinion of himself. Filed under. Sweet but not compelling. Now watch what happens with two words. You look really good tonight, I know. Silence, steady eye contact, the faintest suggestion of a smile, nothing else. What just happened in her brain is seismic. Every man she's ever complimented has responded with gratitude, deflection, or reciprocation. You did none of those things. You absorbed her compliment like it was information you already possessed, which means your self-assessment doesn't depend on her input, which means her approval, the thing every other man scrambles for, already existed inside you before she offered it. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. In the discourses, he writes about how the most effective leaders receive honors with the air of men who expected them, not with arrogance, not with dismissal, with the calm composure of someone who already knew their own value, and music is merely having it confirmed by external sources. I know communicates exactly this. It says without saying it, your compliment is welcome but unnecessary. I was already aware of my worth before you validated it. Your opinion is a nice addition to a conclusion I reached independently. And that independence, that self contained sense of value, is the single most disruptive thing a man can display in front of a woman because music breaks the pattern she's experienced with every other man. And music, pattern interruption, is the doorway to attraction. But here's the part that matters most: the delivery. I know, said with arrogance, is repulsive. I know, said with insecurity, masked as confidence, is transparent. I know, said with genuine, warm, slightly playful self, assurance is nuclear. The tone should carry a hint of humor, a lightness that says you're not taking yourself too seriously, even though you absolutely believe what you just said. It's the difference between a man who's performing cockiness and a man who simply knows himself so well that false modesty would feel dishonest. She'll law, or she'll pause, or her eyes will widen for a fraction of a second. But something will shift. You'll feel it. And more importantly, she'll feel it. Because in that micro moment, you became the most interesting man she's spoken to all week. Not because of what you said, because of what you didn't say. You didn't chase her approval. You didn't return the compliment like a trained reflex. You stood in your own estimation of yourself and let her orbit it. Chapter 5, the second deployment, Scenario 2. She tells you something vulnerable. This is where I know traipse from charming into something much deeper. Something that touches her in a place she protects with everything she has. Every woman carries something she doesn't show the world. A fear, an insecurity, music, a piece of her story that she keeps locked away because the last time she showed it to someone, they either flinched, fixed, or fled. Flinched means they got uncomfortable and changed the subject. Fixed means they immediately tried music to solve it, turning her vulnerability into a problem to be managed rather than an experience to be witnessed. Fled means they pulled away, either physically or emotionally, because her rawness was more than they could handle. She's learned through years of experience that showing her real self is dangerous, so she doesn't. She keeps it behind a wall, and she tests every man who comes near that wall by offering small pieces of herself and watching what he does with them. One night, maybe after enough trust has been built, maybe after a bottle of wine and a conversation that went deeper than either of you planned, she says something real, something like, sometimes I feel like I'm too much for people. Every other man in her life has responded to this with reassurance. No, you're not. You're perfect. Music, anyone who thinks that is crazy. You're not too much at all. And that reassurance, while well-intentioned, does something she doesn't want. It invalidates her experience. It tells her that what she feels is wrong, that she should stop feeling it, that her Jaff perception needs correcting. Now, watch what two words do. Sometimes I feel like I'm too much for people. I now said softly, said with eye contact. That doesn't waver. Said with the weight of a man who isn't surprised by what she just revealed because he already saw it, already understood it, already accepted it before she found the courage to say it out loud. What those two words communicate in this moment is staggering. First, they tell her she's been seen, not music by a therapist, not by a friend who's obligated to comfort her, by a man who looked at her closely enough to already know this about her. And being seen, truly seen, by someone who didn't flinch is one of the most powerful experiences a human being can have. Second, they tell her that her too much doesn't scare you. You're not reassuring her it doesn't exist. You're acknowledging it does exist and telling her through two words and everything behind them that you can handle it. That her intensity, her depth, her complexity, her darkness, whatever she's been told is too much, you already clocked it and you're still here. Third, they tell her that you are a man of terrifying perceptiveness, a man who notices what others miss, a man who reads between lines and beneath surfaces. And that perceptiveness, that depth of attention is addictive music because it means that every future interaction with you carries the possibility of being understood in ways she's never been understood before. Machiavelli wrote about this exact dynamic in his analysis of how certain leaders bonded their subjects to them so music deeply that no rival could break the bond. These leaders didn't do it through generosity or fear. They did it through recognition. They made their people feel known, understood, acknowledged in their complexity rather than reduced to simple categories. A prince who sees his people as they truly are creates a loyalty no prince who sees them as he wishes they, where can ever match. I know is recognition compressed into two syllables. It says, I see the thing you hide and I'm not going anywhere. Chapter 6, the third deployment scenario 3. She's testing you. We've established in previous discussions that women test men constantly, not maliciously, instinctively, and most men fail these tests not because the tests are hard, but because they don't recognize them as tests. They engage with the content instead of the subtext. Here's an example. She music says with a slight edge in her voice, I bet you say that to every girl. Most men hear this and panic. They scramble to defend themselves. No, no, no. I'm serious. I really mean it. I don't talk to anyone else like this. You're different. I promise. Every word dripping with the desperation of a man who senses the ground shifting and is grasping for anything to stabilize it. What she actually wanted to know has nothing to do with whether you say this to every girl. She wanted to see what happens to you when she applies pressure. Does the house of cards collapse? Does the mask crack? Does the calming, confident man she was, attracted to 3 seconds ago, dissolve into a puddle of defensive anxiety? I bet you say that to every girl I know, said with a grin, said with the relaxed energy of a man who just heard the funniest thing all evening, said without a trace of defensiveness, because there's nothing to defend. You didn't deny her accusation, you didn't confirm it, you stepped entirely outside the frame of the test and created your own. And here's the devastating part. She doesn't. Now, what I know means in this context, does it mean you agree? Does it mean you're teasing her? Does it mean you actually do say it to every girl and you don't care? She can't categorize your escrit. She can't file it in the usual folder. And because she can't categorize, she has to think about it. And thinking about you is the first step toward obsessing over you. Machiavelli praised leaders who responded to provocations with ambiguity rather than defensiveness. He noted that the prince who explains himself at every challenge weakens his position because explanation implies doubt. The prince who responds with confident, unreadable composure forces the challenger to second guess their own attack. I know in this context is strategic ambiguity. It gives her nothing to push against. It provides no crack to exploit. It returns the energy of the test back to her with a smile, as if her sharpest weapon just bounced off you without leaving a mark. And a man whose surface can't be scratched is a man she can't stop trying to scratch. Chapter 7, the fourth demlant, scenario 4. She's pulling away. This is the highest stakes demlant, the one that separates men who understand human nature from men who just read about it. Something has shifted. Maybe she's distant. Maybe the docks are shorter. Maybe the warmth is fading and you can feel the temperature dropping between you. Every instinct screams at you to chase, to close the gap, to ask what's wrong, to send the paragraph, to make the grand gesture. She says something like, I think I need some space right now. Every fiber of your being wants to say why, wants to say, what did I do? Wants to say, please, let's talk about this. I can fix it. Instead, I know. 2 words, no chase, no desperation, no paragraph explaining how much she means to you. Just an acknowledgement that tells her something profound. You already knew before she said it. You sensed the shift and you didn't panic. You didn't cling. You didn't try to outrun the distance. You let it arrive. And when it announced itself, you met it with the steadiness of a man who has seen this before and knows that space isn't the ald. It's a breath. And breaths are necessary. I know in this context communicates 3 things simultaneously. First, you're perceptive enough to have seen this coming, which means you're paying attention even when you're not chasing. That's attractive because attention without desperation is the rarest combination a man can offer. Second, you're secure enough to accept distance without interpreting it as rejection. Most men hear I need space, and their brain translates it to I'm leaving. Your calm acceptance tells her that your identity isn't threatened by her absence. You exist fully music, with or without her proximity. Third, you respect her enough to not fight her stated need. You're not music, interrogating her, not guilt tripping her, not making her space about your feelings. You're granting her request with a composure that makes her immediately wonder if she actually wants the space she just asked for. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the power of retreat. He observed that the leader who can withdraw gracefully without appearing weakened often gains more ground than the leader who presses forward at all costs, because graceful retreat communicates something terrifying to the opposing side. It tells them that you are not afraid of losing ground, that your position is so secure, your resources so deep, your confidence so unshakable that temporary distance doesn't threaten you. And the moment she realizes that her absence doesn't diminish you, something paradoxical and beautiful happens. She comes back faster than if you'd chased, harder than if you'd begged, because your composure in the face of distance created the one thing that draws humans back to each other more powerfully than any other force: uncertainty about whether you'll still be there when she returns. Not uncertainty because you threaten to leave. Uncertainty because a man who handles distance this gracefully is a man who might handle permanent distance just as well. And that possibility, the possibility that you could genuinely be fine without her, is the most compelling argument for her to make sure she never has to test it. Chapter 8. Why these two words work at the deepest level. Let me pull back now and explain the unified theory behind all four deployments. Because the surface level explanation, confidence, self assurance, frame control, all of that is true but incomplete. The real reason I know works is because it communicates the one thing Machiavelli identified as the foundation of all: power, all influence, all loyalty, and all attraction. Self possession, not confidence. Confidence can be performed, not strength. Strength can be faked. Self possession, the genuine, bone deep ownership of your own experience, your own value, your own reality. A self possessed man doesn't borrow his identity from the woman in front of him. He doesn't need her compliment to feel good about himself. He doesn't need her vulnerability to feel connected. He doesn't need to pass her test to feel worthy. He doesn't need her presence to feel complete. He already knows before she tells him anything, before she reveals anything, before she tests anything. He already knows who he is, what he's worth, and where he stands. And music, I know, is the verbal expression of that internal reality. Machiavelli spent his entire career observing that people surrender to self-possessed leaders not because they're forced to, but because Doff possession creates a gravitational field that's impossible to resist. The Joff-possessed man doesn't chase followers. Followers accumulate around him naturally because his certainty provides something they can't generate themselves. Orientation. In a world of chaos, noise, contradiction, and confusion, the chaff-possessed man is a fixed point, a lighthouse, a place where the spinning stops. And every human being, man or woman, is searching for that fixed point, because finding it means they can finally stop searching. When you say I now and mean it, when those two words come from a place of genuine self-knowledge rather than performed bravado, you become that fixed point for her temporarily at first. Then, increasingly, until one day she realizes she's stopped looking for it elsewhere because she found it in you. Chapter 9. The warning Machiavelli would attach. But Machiavelli was never a man who gave a weapon without also giving a warning. And he would be furious if I handed you these two words without telling you how they can destroy everything if misused. I know from a man who genuinely knows himself is magnetic. I know from a man who's pretending to, now himself is pathetic. And women can tell the difference faster than you can blink. If you say I know to a compliment, but deep inside you're desperate for her approval, she'll sense the contradiction. The words will ring hollow. The confidence will read as cosplay, music, and instead of attraction, you'll generate something far worse: Cringe, because nothing is more repulsive than a man who's performing a version of himself he hasn't earned. It's the uncanny valley of personality, close enough to real to be disturbing, far enough from real to be dismissed. Machiavelli warned repeatedly about leaders who adopted the appearance of strength without building actual strength underneath it. These leaders lasted months, maybe years before their facade crumbled. And when it crumbled, the fall was worse than if they'd never pretended in the first place, because people don't just lose respect for the pretender, they feel deceived by him, angry at him, and anger is a far more dangerous enemy than indifference. So here's the warning. Don't say I know until you actually know. Don't wear the words until music. You've built the man behind them. Because the words are just the last inch of a mile-long journey, and trying to skip to the last inch without walking the mile will leave you stranded worse than if you'd never started. The mile is the work, the internal work of becoming genuinely self-possessed, of learning your own varial through experience, through failure, through solitude, through the painful process of confronting every lie you've ever told yourself about who you are. The mile is building a life that generates real confidence rather than borrowed confidence, real certainty rather than performed certainty, real daft knowledge rather than the surface level imitation of it. Walk the mile first, then the words become real. Then, I know, stops being a technique and starts being a truth. Chapter 10, the foundation beneath the words. So, how do you build genuine self-possession? How do you become the man who can say, I know, and have it land like an earthquake instead of a whimper? Machiavelli's entire body of work provides the answer. And it comes down to three practices: music. That sounds simple, but will challenge you more than anything you've ever attempted. Practice one, develop a relationship with solitude. Most men cannot sit alone with themselves for 30 minutes without reaching for a phone, a screen, a distraction. They're running from their own company. And a man who can't stand his own presence will never generate the kind of self-knowledge that makes I know real. Solitude is where you meet yourself, really meet yourself, not the version you perform for others. The actual unedited, sometimes ugly, sometimes magnificent person underneath all the performance. Until you've met that person and made peace with him, you don't know anything. Practice two, accumulate evidence of your own competence. Self-possession isn't built on affirmations. It's built on evidence. Do hard things. Finish what you start. Develop skills that take years to master. Face situations that scare you and walk through them anyway. Every completed challenge, every overcome obstacle, every moment where you could have quit and didn't adds a brick to the foundation of genuine chaff knowledge. Eventually, the foundation is so solid that no one's opinion, positive or negative, can shake it because you have receipts, real ones, paid in sweat and time and discomfort. Practice three, stop outsourcing your emotional regulation. Most men use women, friends, social media, substances, music, entertainment, anything external to manage their internal states. Bad day? Need someone to vent to. Feeling anxious? Need someone to reassure you. Feeling lonely? Need someone to fill the silence. Every time you outsource your emotional regulation, you're teaching yourself that you can't handle your own interior, and a man who can't handle his own interior will always need someone else to handle it for him. That need is the opposite of self-possession. Build the ability to sit with discomfort, to feel anxiety without fleeing it, to experience loneliness without immediately feeling it, to hold sadness without needing someone to take it away. Music, this ability is the bedrock of everything we've discussed. Without it, I know is a lie. With it, I know is the most honest thing you'll ever say. Machiavelli spent his life surrounded by men who performed power without possessing it, men who wore crowns but couldn't hold a room, men who commanded armies but couldn't command themselves, men who spoke with authority about everything except the one subject that mattered, who they actually were. He watched these men rise and fall, rise on fall, and from the wreckage he extracted a truth so simple it barely fills a sentence. The man who knows himself cannot be undone by anyone else. Two words carry that truth. I now. Not as music a trick, not as a tactic, not as a clever line to deploy at parties. Music as a declaration of a completed internal journey. The journey from performing to being, from seeking to knowing, from needing her approval to already possessing your own. When you can say those two words and feel the full weight of their truth reverberating through your chest, you won't need anyone to tell you how to talk to women. You won't need scripts. You won't need strategies. You won't need this video or any video like it, because a man who truly knows himself already knows everything he needs to. Now, the words are free. The man behind them costs everything you have. Pay the price. It's worth it. If this landed somewhere real, subscribe. If you know someone who's been performing instead of building, send this to them. Two words might change their life the same way they changed yours. Machiavelli wrote the music blueprint. You just have to be brave enough to read it honestly. Until Nop's time.